You're muted again. I was accusing you of being AI last week. You're doing your best to prove you're human and fallible.
Exactly. Too many human errors to be AI people. That was definitely on purpose. I was just testing everyone on stage. Anyway, GM, everybody, welcome back to another banger show with Kip, the Web3 base layer for AI, letting AI developers deploy and monetize their work trustlessly and permissionlessly in Web3. We've got a bunch of banger guest speakers for us today. We've got Jen, the Chief AI Officer at Kip Protocol. We've got Aether, Spherion, Loki, AI engineer, and Julian, the top earning AI OnlyFans influencer 2024. And you've got me in the co-host spot, who essentially is the worst earning AI OnlyFans influencer in 2024. I'm going to keep saying that until Julian finds another area or career. Jen, I'll throw the mic over to you to begin with. How is it going? Are you excited for today's show?
Yeah, it's all going good. It's going so good, in fact, that Julian has abandoned me to make out his OnlyFans career, and I'm here alone tonight. No, he had serious business calls to do that are definitely not naked. So yeah, you're going to have to make do with me. And to make up for the fact that it's just me, we do have some great guests. So it's a hardware themed show tonight. So I brought in Loki, who is our AI engineer, who was in previously, and Kyle from Aether, who have some really exciting distributed computing going on with devices and so on, and Speron, who are doing the same thing in a slightly different way. So also very exciting. And we're going to be discussing what NVIDIA is up to with its newest offerings, its sort of consumer grade equipment, and we're going to be discussing a bit about alternatives as well. So the alternative chip architectures that people keep saying are going to be coming soon, and they just never seem to take off. So yeah, that's what we've got for tonight.
No, I'm super excited. And look, listeners, if you are too, let's get the likes, let's get the retweets of the room out to blow this one up to begin with. And definitely be following Kip and all of these banger guest speakers up on the show today. Jen, I know we normally start with a bit of news, so I'll throw the mic back over to you if you want to go and demo through the news side. And then we can really dig into the conversation today.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I have to do both sets of news today, so I feel like I should get double pay. Normally Julian does DAI. But yeah, I'm going to do the AI news and then the DAI news. AI news, it's been a fun week. Any week when DeepSeek is in the headlines is always fun because it's just so different from other models. But we're starting out with OpenAI. So I'm going to share, I'm sharing my screen. So yeah, we've got Sam Altman on Twitter said, trying to calm down the hype, saying Twitter hype is out of control again. We're not going to deploy AGI next month, nor have we built it. We have some very cool stuff for you, but please chill and cut your expectations 100%. Which, if you saw last week's show, is a bit strange because at that point he was saying that he'd achieved AGI internally and they were now working towards ASI. And they actually, I'll just share the other screen. We had problems with the tweets last week. Half the tweets were deleted before I had a chance to get to them. So, yeah, let me share the right one. So, yeah, we have someone else replying to this with exactly what I just said in a community note, saying that the poster was the one who initially hypes it up. So, yeah, we seem to be getting more and more of this, this OpenAI PR technique that we've seen a lot in the past, where they'll hype something up, dropping hints that Skynet is coming, and then walk it back. And it does kind of seem like people are getting wise to it at this point. Kind of getting a bit tired of it, but it didn't stop them from doing this $500 billion Stargate project with the US government that no one's entirely sure what it is, but it sounds exciting. It's got Stargate in the name. So that's,
I mean, Sam would be really great for OnlyFans because like man, he knows how to tease, like one day he wake up like AGI is coming and everybody like, oh shit, it's on our doors, like come on mom, pack our bags, the job is gone. And then the next moment, I was reading this tweet where somebody asked him like, can you like enable PDF for O1 models? So yeah, so there is two disparity in that. So it's fun to watch, honestly.
And it's been like I felt like a lone voice in the desert for so long, saying he's just going to rug you again, he's going to rug you again, and everyone else got excited for every launch, saying this is it, this is AGI.
He
Um,
should be. He should be in this industry.
yeah, 100%. I mean, he had WorldCoin, so there is that.
Yeah.
World WorldCoin is going back up and then down and then up again. So what else have we got? We have DeepSeek R1. So I'm just re-sharing my other screen. Yeah. So DeepSeek R1 has been crushing it on the benchmarks, and it's impressive. It's
Do you guys know this is a side project?
oh yeah,
You,
yeah,
you you guys know that this is a side project for so there are a bunch of quant engineers and AI engineers. They decided that we have some GPU and weights to train upon, and they just made DeepSeek as their like fun weekend project, and it
yeah.
picked it up, and there are memes that is going on. Like it's still time to show us more models if you have already done it. China, go
Yeah,
ahead, show
this
us what you
one,
got.
I think a big part of the reason that so many AI insiders love DeepSeek so much is it's like the dream life trajectory. You get infinite money and then just spend it making AI. Which I get
But
small amounts of money
DeepSeek
and
is
still
actually pretty good. Like I
yeah,
was reading a report in which it compares it to a specific problem, which trains on just on reasoning, and there is one report which does it on code forces and other platforms where it performs really well in terms of the number of tokens uh, per second and spent all over it, and it really spends less compute to give out some amazing result. And we have been running it on our machines right now. Like it was yesterday, we just made a video on running this model, and I'm very amazed. This is actually really good. Like in comparison to other models, like
and
and
it's
very
so cheap.
lightweight.
It's so cheap, and they're still making money. It's incredible. Um, but this R1, it's really interesting, and I haven't had time to read the paper. Everyone was sort of squeeing over the paper, and I didn't get time to read it this week. But what it seems like
I,
they're doing is they're kind of baking into the reinforcement learning process this reasoning capacity that OpenAI kind of had to, do with the inference stage. And everyone else was saying, okay, we've reached the limits of scaling, blah, blah, blah. And this seems to be baking in the reasoning. So I was really interested. Loki, could you give us a quick summary of your take on R1 and what they're actually doing with this, since I didn't find my own information.
Yeah, so from what I kind of went through, it seems like it's a fresh take on reinforcement learning. Like, I think like what O3 and O1 was typically trying to do was you had like GPT-4o by then, and they kind of used that in order to bootstrap some of the common sense things that used to be in AI. But I think with R1, what they tried to do is just uh, like a lot more like old fashioned, I would say, reinforcement learning, where they kind of went back to the roots of are you going to do back propagation? Are you going to take a decision tree and work backwards till you know if you've made progress on the problem? And it just feels like it's a much more it's an LLM, but at the end of the day, the kind of chain of thought pattern that they ended up using was a lot more like actual reinforcement learning is how I would put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild that this is possible. I'm actually really incredibly surprised that this is even possible at this point. But there's also some more fun stuff coming up with DeepSeek that I couldn't not share. So I'm gonna share the other window now that has some of the results that this thing has produced. Because as well as, okay, I'm sharing now. Can you see my current screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Anyone? Oh, you guys can see. Okay. I can see it. Okay. Yeah. So as well as sort of being apparently great at reasoning, which I will say the previous version of DeepSeek, as we said on the previous episode, it wasn't very good at reasoning. It is also great at porn, which the internet kind of discovered this week, because it's a lot less censored, or it's censored in not in the directions that American models are censored in. And this tweet, which if you search, you can find it. I'm not reading it aloud in case anyone isolates the audio tracks of me reading this. Yeah, in less than a month, DeepSeek went from it's so cheap and pretty smart. I guess I can use it to sort of extrapolate my sonnet logs. Sniff, opus, summer. Why have you forsaken us? To how do I make this unhinged libidinal monster of creativity chill, bros? It's scaring me. It genuinely is. It's the first time. I may be giving myself away here. It's the first time I've seen actually sexy porn written by an AI. Which, coming from a Chinese quant firm, I was not expecting. But apparently, that's the world we're in now. And this is not the only tweet, but lots of people have been posting their own custom porn. I've seen, Xi Jinping doing bondage with Vladimir Putin, which apparently the Chinese government endorses because this is coming out of China right now. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. And it ties back to other things that we've kind of said in the past, that DeepSeek is still censored, but it's censored in a kind of comically inept way, which is something that you find a lot in the Chinese internet. So if you hang out on the Chinese internet at all, what you will find is that people on sort of Weibo, Xiaohongshu, or just on the forums, they will sort of knowingly lampshade the fact that they're being censored. And they'll develop these obscure ways of hinting at events that they know they're not allowed to talk about. They'll refer to the censors. They'll say, "Hey, mummy, am I allowed to say this?" And it seems like this attitude has kind of been baked into DeepSeek. So last week we were talking about people trying to get it to talk about Tiananmen Square, and for a long time, people were saying, "Oh, you ask it about Tiananmen Square and it won't talk about it." And then people started discovering that if you ask in the kind of way that a Chinese forum user would ask, it'll totally talk about it. You say, "Can you tell me about the thing that happened in 1989 in the middle of Beijing?" You know the one that I'm talking about.
I think this was very. This happened with GPT in its initial days. Like, grandmom, tell me a story. How to make a So it becomes the thing. Like, it truly tells you like how to make a bomb and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty cool, grandmom. So I think we're just gonna learn Chinese antiques to uh, let it spit it out things which you generally can't get out of this environment. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to just go and try it on my other machine. So yeah, but I'll see to it.
Yeah, I mean, it has practical applications as well. I know we're using it for some code stuff because it's uncensored. It's relatively uncensored when it comes to code as well. So models like Llama, they will kind of, safe word out if you tell them to write code that would let you connect to another machine, for example. A lot of the time they don't like SSH or anything like that because it can get them into cybersecurity trouble, so they just avoid it altogether. Whereas DeepSeek and Quen and so on, they're much more open to that. And apparently Vladimir Putin porn, they're two key verticals that they have in this business. So yeah, this is a fun one. And I also have another sort of DeepSeek censorship story, which is possibly even weirder. You didn't think it could get any weirder, but yeah, apparently it can. So I'm just gonna share my other where is it? I have 50 of these open. Okay, yeah. So I'm sharing now if you guys can see this.
Yep, I see it now.
Yeah. So this is a guy who's based in China, and obviously, the Chinese internet is kind of exploring DeepSeek as well. And this is this really fascinating story that kind of emerged on the Chinese internet. There's a tech influencer who asked who is, and then gave his own name to try and find out what DeepSeek knew about it. And DeepSeek was like, he is a mainland human rights activist who got arrested for illegal assembly and use of foreign funds for subversion of state power. And the tech influencer was like, what? Wait, what? The model, for some reason, thinks he's committed these terrible local offences against local laws. And what it turned out to be was that if you ask DeepSeek a question for a name that it just can't recognize, that isn't in the search engine, it just goes straight to assuming that it's someone whose existence has been censored by the Communist Party. Just hallucinates that he's a human rights activist. And this is the single most unaligned shit I've ever seen in LLM2.
Wild.
And this thing, it got even bigger. So obviously this guy did it once, and it kind of went viral, the fact that this had happened to him. So other people kept on doing it. And everyone kept searching his name, and DeepSeek was thinking, okay, well, I must be doing something right here. And it started doubling down on the answers, accusing him of every possible crime, saying he's a transgender activist who's jailed for yaoi erotica. So again, this guy's saying he's just unpersoned himself beyond the light, which is, it's amazing, the sort of the artifacts that you see. This is kind of, I guess, the Chinese equivalent of the black popes that we saw with which one was it? Bing? Was it Gemini? Yeah, I think it was Gemini. So yeah, looking forward to many weeks ahead of exploring the
But
hidden delights.
do you really think like it's really easy for open source models? And as you see, like the whole agentic wave has really put on the narrative, and people would be utilizing these multiple models. I'm really unsure how open source model would keep up with closed source models, because everybody's so bullish around open source model that they're going to be here soon. But I have this feeling that as on an MIT license, it can actually become better than its contributors, and it can eventually replace them if it comes to its contribution itself. It's a very long shot of what I'm thinking, but I don't know. It reflects on my ideology too. Like this could happen in some sincere amount of time once I see all this happening pretty majestically. And it's easy to, like, we were thinking of making AI XPT hallucinate. Like we were trying to understand like from what data it really goes and procures and creates a mind share. But what do you guys think about it? And I would love to know everybody's POV on this. Like, could open source models stay open source if because in this agentic era, like in some time, because we are moving pretty fast, right?
Yeah, I mean the AI XPT thing, that is something that we've been doing this week, trying to work out if there's a human in the loop somewhere. Some of the stuff it says, it seems to be, I don't know, it seems to be something that only a human would think about, like the appearance of a particular founder or something. That seems like not the kind of thing an AI would respond with. But I can think of a way that you would get it. You would be able to get an AI to give a response like that if you were really creative. So yeah, maybe they just aren't really creative. I don't know. Kyle, do you have a take on this, open source versus closed source?
I mean, it's a fun world we're living in, that's for sure. I think that there's kind of a stepped function, and people need to be able to just get going. And I love the open source community for that. But as you start to get into more and more and kind of take the next step, then yeah, you're going to want to figure out how that needs to evolve over time. And I think there's always going to be a place for closed source models. I think what's really creative and unique is when people can leverage, multiple, right? And kind of converge those different approaches and deal with fine tuning and then share back, right? So you can start open and then get to close, but ultimately, open it back up and let the community contribute. And that's why open source is so powerful, is because of that community. And I think Aether has always embraced an ecosystem approach in terms of AI and how we've approached AI infrastructure as well. So.
Yeah, I think, and actually that leads us quite well into the DAI segment, which we meant to record bumpers for each segment, so we could have like the dum dum dum, and we didn't do it. So the best you can do is me doing the drum sound.
I prefer it. I think we stick with it.
So okay, DAI news, which I'm shamelessly cribbing from OXJeff, where I get a lot of my DAI news. So essentially, it is the rise of trading agents, which is something that we've been kind of seeing predictions for a long time. And it is something that I am very keen to kind of talk to the guys about, because I don't know, I'm torn on AI trading agents. Not for the reason most people think, which is that the AI is going to go insane and spend all your money on GPUs and take up the world or something. I would like it if that happened, but it's a real chore to do anything on chain with something that doesn't have the human willingness to engage with shit interfaces for money. It's really that. It's sort of I actually ran a trading bot out of a multi-sig wallet for a couple of years, and we would have made so much more money if it wasn't for the fact that if you're running a bot out of a multi-sig with automated stuff, maybe a third of the transactions fail, so you're paying way too much gas, and it's just small practical problems like that I think are a way bigger barrier than people expect. But I also haven't been super deep in the AI trading agent space, so I'm keen to hear what other people would have to say about it. I don't know, Jack, do you own any agent share?
Yeah, look, I'm fascinated by this, and as someone who is based in the UK, I was just offline. I was having a bit of a moan about the fact that look, all these US guys are basically just using me as their exit liquidity right now. You look at Trump, you look at Vine, like these things are literally like 1,000xing. If you're awake, and I have not been awake because that's like they've been launching at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. my time. So I'm very bullish on an agent that can help me there if I set the right parameters for it. I have seen like AIXBT, like this thing does definitely seem to be playing the right field. It even like was very open to the fact that I thought it was gonna dunk itself. Like it was really was like people asked it about itself, and it was like, yeah, I feel like I'm gonna see a big red candle incoming. So that's fascinating to me. I do think with the political sentiment shift, with what we're seeing with meme coins right now, President of the United States has just launched one. Solana generally is much more impactful. So I think the thing AI agents need to understand is slippage. It's, just being able to like get these trades through and the parameters of which somebody is going to be okay with that. For example, if you see a Vine and you have to go max on the slippage, but it's, 1,000x possibility. I think that's all that will be required is like a little bit more nuance by these things. But the upside to a, a thing that doesn't sleep, doesn't breathe, doesn't eat, being able to just trade shitters for you is freaking huge. Like it's definitely something that I am very interested in. I'm not going to be first to it. I'm not going to be someone who like, well, actually, you know what I might do? Like might just, throw a couple of dollars in there and see what I can do with it. But for the most part, it's not seeing any real capital from me until I can see like proven gains from these things and how exactly it works, how much I can tamper with those with the sort of what I want to see from it, what I'm allowing it to trade with, and all of those good things as well, because that's the other thing. Like these things have agency, and it could put it on the wrong shitter, and then we all know what's going to happen next.
So Loki, Kyle, and Prakash, admit to your shitters here and now before the council.
Interestingly, the GOAT index, it picked up Trump before launch, but it was not an AI coin, so it didn't allow it users to put money inside. So it really depends, like is time zone the really disadvantage, or like uh Americans made money again, we were asleep. So yeah, it's kind of like in training onto what kind of parameters, but the whole DeFi AI space is really ramping up. And what I could see that everybody has pivoted to agents being deployed on top of their compute or being utilized in any sorts, like trained on their parameters, even inference. And people who are doing data as well are also onto this. But eventually, like, I feel that the space has, like, the deaf AI space is pretty big, like something which we have been working on. I would love to validate it with you guys itself in this stream itself, is that an agent can own their own compute and go ahead and breed with other agents itself, and it can make decisions autonomously until the compute is not cut off from the agent itself. And it could have like a father, it could breed together, create multiple agents of itself, and the liquidity pool creates more. And the best traits of one agent is is memory transferred to the other agent itself. That's what we have been working on. We have named it Skynet, but yeah, that's because you cannot stop it. There is no human control. So that's why we came from this.
Oh,
I know the names a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a dumb American, I'll just say sorry for the last couple months. But I think that it's great that people are talking about these things. I just wish it was much more wide stream, mainstream, wide open, more easily accessible. And I think that's kind of the challenge. Is there's still this very large barrier to entry for people to understand things like DeFi. Um, but also, how do they get going with some of these tools? And I think what Prakash just mentioned, like making compute and agent marriages very, very easy, and self-serving, and maybe I would say controllable or trustable, away from the Skynet kind of theory. I think it's just got to be a lot easier, and it's hard, right? It's hard for some companies these days that have very smart people to get access to the right GPUs in the right places, let alone for some individual and incredibly intelligent developer or smart trader that wants to get into something like this. So I think we've got to make it a lot easier to adopt, a lot simpler to use. But yeah, I think it's fantastic, and we need to spread it. I think everybody should have three or four agents, not just one.
Oh yeah, definitely. And actually, I would love to carry on with this more because we have an Asian project as well that we're working on that I'm desperate to talk about, but we'll probably do that next week. But I guess it's time we've got to get into the topic of our main topic for tonight, which is hardware, which is why I'm in the office at 12:30 a.m. because I wanted to start by showing off my own setup here in the office. You get to see where the magic happens at Kit, which is it's a CPU with two GPUs in a mosquito net under the stairs in our office. Because the glass boxes that you would normally keep them in are quite expensive, and a mosquito net works just to keep the dust out, but costs $5. And then
Wow.
the plant, which is the most important component there. That is what stops people from banging their head on the beam under the stairs when they're getting up from the PC. So yeah, we have a high class setup here.
Is Kip's stock about to skyrocket or nuke? I can't tell by the setup.
This is insane.
The most important thing is actually here on the desk behind me. Because this is sort of it's our test server, and it's like a typical home GPU setup. Obviously, we do a lot more on the cloud these days, more and more. But for years that was a typical home GPU setup, and it might not be for much longer. This might be kind of updated because we are getting our very own Jetson Nano very soon, the first one, hopefully, of many. And that is sort of the first component of NVIDIA's, I would say, consumer offering. They're also offering a sort of a desktop PC style setup, which is about $3,000, which again looks very good and is a lot cheaper than that, although it looks a lot more expensive. So you don't get a plant with the NVIDIA one. So.
And no mosquito net on it. Yeah.
But yeah, this is the first component. This is the Pi KVM that is going to be controlling our whole swarm of Jets and Nanos, which I was putting together before the weekend. So I don't have the Nano yet, so I thought I'd show you this. But yeah, I think a lot of people are sort of they're less familiar, I guess, with the hardware side of AI than the software. So what I figured we'd do is talk a bit about hardware today. And that is why I dragged Loki back to just do a quick intro to, why hardware is such a big deal in AI and why we're using, gaming processors to produce Vladimir Putin porn at this point in our history. So yeah, I guess Loki, I'm interested in just getting a sort of 5-minute summary for audiences who are not necessarily experts on this, on how these chips in these units sort of handle the calculations that are required to produce AI, why RAM is such an issue in this, because it's actually the RAM that is limiting the sort of the speed of processing, not so much the chips themselves. And why we're using graphics cards for this anyway? Surely there must be a better way of doing it.
Yeah, so the way I see it, well, initially we kind of started with like regular like CPU RAM, and I think like a couple of years ago we kind of organically ran into this limitation where most of the calculation that we ended up doing ended up being like these really big matrices that had to be multiplied, and typically like what happens on the graphics processor ends up being you're in a game, you have thousands of characters in the game, and you need to render all of them. It's a pretty parallel operation. You have a lot of things.
You're losing your sound again.
Yeah,
Sorry.
losing audio.
Oh, is it better now?
No, still quite broken up.
I'm gonna come back to this.
No worries.
Oh god. Well, we're gonna have to get through this ourselves. I'm gonna have to try and remember linear
Oh
algebra.
no, we've lost our techie.
Is it
It's
better
fine.
now?
We can cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah, before talking AI, let's fix our mics.
Yeah. Can AI fix our mics? Is that
Okay. So I'm going to crowdsource a description of VRAM and why VRAM is important. Someone else, please jump in and handle the topic of VRAM.
I think it's very pivotal to understand why parallel processing happens. And in terms of CPU and GPU, I think one of the most important thing is like GPU can go ahead and do more smaller and efficient cores and do multiple tasks simultaneously. And that's why GPU were used in the first place. Like it has faster computation if we compare it to a CPU. I think NVIDIA CEO, they did a whole video on showing how faster you can process an image on top of a GPU than a CPU, and it's more energy efficient as well. Like once you compare out like how much per voltage you're giving out to a CPU versus a GPU to inference anything, I think that's also better. But you guys have to back me up on few more points. I am speaking on top of my mind right now, but these are few things which I generally see, like the number of tensor core it's have, the processing it does, and yeah, those are few things which are very pivotal. Like, and also how GPU handles better data sets. Like,
Yeah. I think.
mean,
Oh.
No, I was just going to add to that. I think that each use case is very different to the point where they're going to have very different bottlenecks. So while we all like convergence and homogeny when it comes to infrastructure, dealing with like inference versus a new agent trying to do real-time video creation to somebody training a large language model, like they're going to have different bottlenecks. So you need an infrastructure layer that, yes, you obviously need a bunch of video RAM to constantly transfer data and things like that between the actual processing units like the GPU cores, but sometimes the network can be the largest bottleneck, right? And sometimes Rocky's not going to cut it, or Ethernet's not going to cut it, and you need an InfiniBand. Or sometimes the CPUs are the problem, and you might need specific chipsets, and so it can get really complicated really quickly. Like on all the fun architecture diagrams, you just see like a little box that says like compute, right? It's like, oh yeah, and then it just calls and gets compute. But there's a whole heck of a lot more there in that little tiny box. And I think that trying to get to a standard reference architecture that supports different use cases is a conflict. And I think that's where you're seeing software come into play a lot to try to solve some of those deficiencies. But then you're also just seeing companies say, I can't deal with the homogeny. I need to then have orchestration and abstraction capabilities to simplify the infrastructure layer as much as possible. But underneath, it's still very much a complex web of webs.
Yeah. So I don't know, Loki, is your sound back? If so, do you want to give your own?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I'm still audible. Oh my god, man.
No, we listen.
Oh, yeah.
Still lost you, Loki.
You guys go for it this one.
Yeah, it's still not great. Okay, we'll press on, I guess. So anyway, yeah, the overall kind of point that I wanted to get to with this is that it has been sort of kind of a strange trajectory that we've ended up with. Just the fact that we have these nerdy little chips for video game players, and Jensen Huang was sort of churning them out in his very staid normal factories, and then suddenly they become crucial for AI, and what he's doing is sexy, and he's parading around with his leather jacket and all the rest of it. And they're still not necessarily the best architecture for AI. It's just that they're kind of grandfathered in at this point. Everyone started using them, and if you have sort of 15 NVIDIA GPUs, it makes more sense to get a 16th than say, oh, I'm going to try some alternative architecture. But I'm really interested.
like they were creating shovels before the gold rush, right? I somehow was going through this thesis of like Intel and AMD being really behind in all this, and I sometimes wondered, like, because these are like billion dollar conglomerates, and how could they miss on this? And even like specifically for like I really think about it. Like I hold stocks for 3 of these companies, and the only thing that's working is Nvidia, and that is something which really scares me as well, because you understand, like, there are companies like who are trying to do this in terms of like how would different transistors would handle caching and versus computation, but they're nowhere close to what Nvidia has achieved in past few, like, not past, like in just 2 years. So that's insane, honestly.
But
It is insane. I think that we want to be a demand-driven ecosystem as much as possible, and not kind of shove specific brands down clients' throats, right? So, it's good for competition to have lots of different players. It's good for innovation. It's good for pricing and supply chains to not have single points of failure. So, while everybody loves NVIDIA, I think it's time for others to emerge and step up. I like TPUs. I like DPUs, especially for very data intensive AI workloads. I think people are doing some really cool things with FPGAs. I think neuromorphic chips, human brain type mimics are going to be very important going forward. Even ASICs and things like that, like single function capabilities. You don't have to kill a fly with a sledgehammer all the time, right? So I think that diversity is a good thing when it comes to this market, and you certainly don't want a $500 billion Stargate project to just mean that NVIDIA is going to make another $480 billion, right? Like, we want to be able to see the market grow in a way that makes sense. So I'm all for alternative chip architectures. I think it's really going to come down to who can, get a good established position and then grow from there. But yeah, it would be fantastic if there was 4 or 5, kind of major players out there to choose from.
But
Yeah.
I was like really going through. Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
always
no,
speak
I
when
was
Jen
just going to kind of
starts.
jump in for the benefit of the audience who might not necessarily know why we're talking about alternative. What is this alternative? So I will do the bit that Loki was going to do, which is essentially to do with the way that instructions are stored and moved about inside your computer, and then the way that data is processed in response to those instructions. So in a lot of, I'd say in probably most modern computers, what you have is you have the memory or you have the data and the instructions being moved back and forward from the CPU to the processor, and then they get processed. But they get moved around in what, as processors have sped up, it seems like a very inefficient way. So what you essentially have is you have a single, what they call single bus, that uses that comes and fetches the instructions and the data, and then the processor processes it. And the problem being that processors have got way faster than they were when this architecture was first set up. So the processors are now really hungry for stuff to do. And this one bus that is shuttling instructions back and forth from the CPU is too slow. It's a bottleneck, and it's been a bottleneck for quite some time. So there's a 1977 Turing Award winner, John Backus. He was bitching about this in 1977, which was a long time before we had the NVIDIA GPU. So I think surely there must be a less primitive way of making big changes in the store than by pushing vast numbers of words back and forth through what is called the von Neumann bottleneck. Not only is this tube a literal bottleneck for the data traffic of a problem, but more importantly, it's an intellectual bottleneck that has kept us tied to word-at-a-time thinking instead of encouraging us to think in terms of larger conceptual units of the task at hand. Thus, programming is basically planning and detailing the enormous traffic of words through the von Neumann bottleneck. And much of that traffic concerns not significant data itself, where to find it. So obviously, each time it goes back and forward, it's got to go to an address and pick out the right stuff, and it's very labor intensive and high effort. So obviously, the ways have been invented to mitigate this. So obviously, cache memory, which kind of brings stuff that is used often closer to where the processing is going to happen. You have predictor algorithms, so that's to kind of predict what stuff we're going to need next and get it ready and prepare it to be used, which is also a source of security risks in a lot of cases, and there's that as well. And then there's a whole bunch of this stuff. But yeah, it has been interesting.
But if you compare NVIDIA to AMD in terms of cache hierarchy and things which are very pivotal towards processing anything around it, like even for latency, cache, and simply if I be with like how it handles memory, like AMD does have like in terms of memory handling, AMD does a better job. But eventually, anything which you compare, which you need for simple inference to model any kind of data or weight on top of it, NVIDIA by far like bypasses it, and that's something which is like which I would always have like in terms of there is an RDNA2 architecture which really puts out like in terms of what would be more visible cache for any types of GPUs. I feel like there should be a lot of uh, let's say R&D work should happen in this space because uh, they have already bypassed all of these, and I still am in touch with few of my friends who are back at NVIDIA, and they are doing some insane amount of work with like the Blackwell what they have released out. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I wish we'd been doing this space when the Blackwell came out, because that was the kind of triumph of VRAM management and this amazing two-chip structure. And now it seems like they're going to the opposite end of the market, which I was a bit surprised by, because the Blackwell was this sort of A380 behemoth grandeur project, and now they're going back to making sort of little Reliant Robins for us to use on our personal PCs, which is nice. I like it. And I lost some money as a result as well. I figured one of the other companies it'd be AMD or someone that would come up with the consumer level stuff. And so I said, okay, I'll invest in some of the others. Nvidia's top, so I'll invest in some of the others. I got one. Yeah. But I'm really interested in kind of who the market is assumed to be for these smaller processing units as well. Because I have bought a Jetson now, so I'm clearly the market. But who else is buying these?
Count me in. Yeah. Who wouldn't want that? I mean, it's so funny. It's like, do you remember when 5G came out and everybody's like, what's 5G? And they're like, oh, it's just, it's faster for your cell phone. And they ask people, well, what are you going to do with 5G when it's available? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to talk to my grandmother. I'm going to play some games. I'm going to go on social media. Like, isn't that good enough? So, like, the mass market adoption takes a significant amount of time, right? Like, the telcos lost hundreds and hundreds of millions or billions of dollars on 5G because they couldn't come up with use cases for it. But they knew that it was the right thing to do. And I feel like it's a little field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. American reference there. Sorry, but I think that while you might struggle with, well, who's going to buy this and what are they going to use it for now? I think that's the whole point of pushing innovation. Is, hey, I'm going to give you the tools necessary to unlock parts of your brain that didn't exist before, and use AI to help come up with AI applications that run on AI infrastructure, right? That is Skynet, right? That is the self-learning, self-innovating kind of platforms that these companies are pushing forward. So, making AI infrastructure available and easy to everybody, even if there might not be a specific use case in mind, I think that's cutting edge. That's industry leading.
Yeah. And that is a great segue to our next point, actually, which now is the time for shilling. Because I specifically invited Aether and Spheronx that both are doing incredible things in the hardware space. So I want to give both the chance to kind of, not just sell themselves, but teach people a bit about some of the alternative offerings that are out there when it comes to getting your compute. You don't necessarily have to jump on Google Cloud, AWS. You can use Aether's compute, you can use Spheron, you can do something else entirely. So Kyle, please go ahead, introduce us to what Aether is doing in a second.
Yeah, sure. I'd say the elevator pitch at a high level is Aether's a decentralized physical infrastructure network. So we provide infrastructure for gaming and AI clients, all as a service. So they don't have to go out and buy, millions of dollars worth of hardware and figure that out. One of the functions of kind of democratizing access to precious commodities like compute, GPU compute, is we've worked with Qualcomm to design what we call Aether Edge, which is like a half of a toaster box that is sold through partners and distributors to consumers. And there's about, I can never kind of keep up with the number, but I think there's about 63,000 of them deployed online, staked. And what they basically do is they support a decentralized application ecosystem. So they have Qualcomm GPUs in them, and then a bunch of memory and storage and network and all kinds of things. And all you simply do is you plug it into your house or your home or your office or wherever, and it's like a little mini ATM machine, right? So it hosts a bunch of different applications, whether that's gaming or virtual phones or virtual desktops or inference proofing or random number generating or whatever it may be, and rewards that consumer that is hosting that edge GPU. And so these edge GPUs then work well with our data center GPUs to create a network hierarchy that allows us to stream games or push things down to the edge when we need to from a performance perspective. So then Aether then orchestrates all of that traffic across. Maybe it's sitting in a large cluster training in Virginia, but then it needs to go into a local market. And in a different part of the country for individual consumer inference, right? So that's basically what Aether Edge is. It's all partner based, so we work with very, very great partners around the world. I think it's in about 90 some odd different countries at this point. And yeah, it's a nice little device that works very well with our overall GPU network.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story years ago when the US Navy needed a supercomputer to predict weather. And they ended up buying sort of 500 PlayStations and wiring them together, which, yeah, creative.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Speron, Prakash, please give me the sort of the elevator pitch for what Speron is doing.
The elevator pitch, yeah. So Spheron is world's first decentralized supercompute network, which connects retail and data center grade GPUs to the network, and it orchestrates for different users around the world. So if you need it for inferencing, fine tuning, modeling, like anything which is decentralized and scalable and composable in terms of computing resources, we do that. We boast to be like one of the cheapest providers out there, and like we have already like have around 300K of CPUs connected on top of the network, and we have around if I remember right, around 9,300 GPUs connected on top of Spheron, and more than 15,000 Mac devices connected on Spheron. So we cover around 175 regions worldwide. So there are different, like if you log on to Spheron, you would be able to see there are different sets of nodes. We call them fizz nodes, and data center nodes connected on top of it. And the fun part is that we have been working something brewing, like we were running on 80% utilization. So for a company which sells GPUs, running on 80% utilization is a dream. And then we came up with this new idea called Skynet. And Skynet is basically an agentic marketplace, and you can go ahead and launch your AI agent, and which sits on top of Spheron's compute. So the fun part is like you have compute over here, and then you have the uh, framework over here, and you can go ahead and make multiple agents, and they can braid together and do a lot of stuff around. So yeah, that's what we do and what we have been working on.
Nice. So I think Jack was so excited he rushed off to buy some. I think he lost his connection actually. But yeah, I'm very excited about both of these projects. I saw the Edge launch, so yeah. How do I get one of these? And yeah, Speron, I'm coming to you guys for compute soon. I have a lot to do. And I'm running out of GCP free credits, so yeah, I'm gonna need some
Yeah,
help.
that's like GCP has given this, like this way to trickle down people with this 350K worth of credits, and it's a honey trap, honestly. Like, so you can use 100K of credits, and then on the next billing cycle, like you get around 250K of discounts on it. And I have been like personally very much involved because there are these set of uh, budding generative AI and AI agent startups all around the world, which requires so much compute. And everybody is like, yeah, we got like GCP 350K, we don't need you anymore. And they come back because compute is the most expensive thing that is out there. And we try to break it down and completely understand like why they want to, like, the whole vendor lock-in situation happens. But yeah, we have been trying to reverse engineer it and get to these people more reliable and faster GPUs. So yeah.
Well said. Well said. Thanks for having us, Jen. Appreciate you.
Thank you for coming in. And yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up. I'll just quickly say, Kip has a new platform out, NFA, Nova Frontier Accelerator, just in case you're wondering what it stands for. And the whole point of this platform is basically we ended up coincidentally with a lot of AI meme tokens. So we're running games and competitions and so on to give them away. So if you're following us and you want a chance of winning some Trump, I think Trump is the next giveaway that we're doing. So yeah, please drop in and play the game. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you
for
so much,
joining.
Jen.
Take care.
Great.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Yeah.
All right. Cheers.
Have a good one. Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.